Thank you, Dr. Mason, for that introduction. And I must say, it has already been a wonderful ceremony today. Melinda, you hit it square on the head when you cited Jeremiah, because we were known, we were set apart, and we were appointed before we were even formed in our mother's womb. Doesn't that make you excited to know that God has something special and planned for every one of you sitting here today? Every one of you. And Lee, your song was inspirational. You said while you sung that song, the Lord is faithful, and truly, He is faithful to accomplish the thing that He has begun in your life until that day that we see Jesus Christ. Dr. Caldwell, I will have to say, you took all the Star Wars jokes, so my speech is probably going to be a little shorter. Let me start out by saying this. Congratulations, LeTourneau University, class of 2024. What a momentous day for each one of you. I promise you that there will be few days in life that will put a bigger smile on your face than the day that you're sitting in today. And there will be few days in this life that will bring you a bigger sigh of relief. So relax and enjoy it and take a really deep breath. No more finals, no more pop quizzes, and no more stress over that GPA. Those three pesky initials that have dictated every waking moment and some sleeping moments of the last 4 years or more of each of your lives. But never fear, now there will be other sets of three letters that will bring you stress, like CPA. Let's just hope that none of you end up under the stresses of the CIA. That's definitely not what you need, right? But I'm confident that that won't be the case, because the education, the support, and the guidance that each of you have received here at LeTourneau University has been second to none. I can assure you that you are ready for what comes next. Before I go further, let me thank LeTourneau University President Dr. Stephen Mason for his visionary and his strong leadership of this institution, and for this gracious invitation to be your speaker here today. Thank you also to the members of the faculty, the Board of Trustees, and all the friends and family that are gathered here today who played vital and pivotal roles in shaping each one of you sitting in these chairs. They have shaped you to be the future leaders of family, society, industry, and the economy. Students, you could not have done it without them. So take a moment, turn, and give them a round of applause for their efforts. Now back to the graduates. Students, before you cross over the threshold from the collegiate world into the even more chaotic world that awaits, let me give you my perspective on what your point of view in life should be. That's your POV. I saw that acronym the other day and I had to look it up. And when it said point of view, I thought, oh, well, that makes sense. Point of view. But what do I mean when I mean POV? Here's my message to you today. Prioritize, optimize, vaporize. That's going to be your POV that we're going to talk about today. First, prioritize. Let me tell you, you must prioritize your callings in this life. If you didn't know it before now, let me reassure you that as we've talked about, God has created each one of you with equal and eternal value in this world, and He has placed a special purpose on your life. Don't ever doubt it, even when others do. What's more, each one of you, in my opinion, has three major callings. You have a faith calling, a family calling, and a vocational calling. The key here, and from this day forward, is that you prioritize them in the right order, and that you provide the appropriate time, attention, energy, and resources accordingly. You must absolutely keep your relationship with Christ first above all things. That's your faith calling. Second, you must fulfill your call as a husband, a wife, a father, a mother, a son, and a daughter. That's your family calling. But you also have this responsibility to your Creator to undertake the vocation that He has prepared you for. For the past few years, you have all been working primarily to prepare for that vocational calling. But luckily for you, this institution weaves in your faith calling and your family calling, and they understand the significance of that, so you have been completely prepared for the rest of your life. If I were to describe your shape as I look at each one of you, I'd say that you are well-rounded. That's the shape you have today. And this institution and the people in this room have helped make you well-rounded. But now is the time to decide, if you haven't already, that you must prioritize that faith calling and your family calling ahead of your vocational calling as you move down life's road. The good news is that if you do, your vocational calling will work out. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. How do I know? Matthew 6:33 gives us this assurance. After reminding us not to store up treasures on earth, but to store up treasures in heaven, Christ reminds us not to worry about our life or what we are going to eat or what we're going to wear. Instead, he says this, quote, "But seek ye first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you." Don't forget, that's what you're seeking in this life. He's talking about putting your faith calling first. This seems simple enough, but at some point, your mettle will be tested. It will seem as though those callings come into seeming conflict, but I can assure you they don't. You just may not see what the Lord has in store for you. But in that critical moment, what you decide will have deep ramifications for your faith and for your family and for your vocation. So choose wisely. Let me tell you from experience when this happened to me and how it reinforced my need to keep my priorities straight. And let me, by doing this, testify to the faithfulness of our Heavenly Father. The year was 2005. My son was just born. He graduates high school this year. 2005, my son was born. I was just starting on the city council in Tyler, my first elected service. Following my vocational calling, I knew that the Lord called me from a very early age to serve in public service. So this was my first chance to prove that the Lord hadn't gotten it wrong. And I wanted to do a great job. But here my son was born, and 2 years later we find out he's deaf. And I've just started my second term in office as a city council member in Tyler. And the question became from my wife and I, how do we best educate our deaf son? We had no idea. So we sought out God's wisdom. We sought out the institutions across this United States to determine what should we do? How should we progress with his education? We know we have to invest in his future. I can tell you in 2008, I sent out 100 resumes to Houston, Texas, because we had determined there was a school in Houston, Texas that we needed to get to, a special school for the deaf that we needed to get him to. 100 resumes in 2008. You know how many responses I got? 0. You know how deflating that is for an ego? It is really deflating. After a year of trying that in 2009, in January 2009, my wife and I simply said, you know what? We've done all we can do. We thought the Lord was calling us down to Houston for our son Caleb, but we're going to have to give it up to him. Lord, we give it up to you. I guess we're going to stay here, and let's run for city council in Tyler one more time. That race, that election is in May. Let's go ahead and sign up, and let's go. So my wife started driving 2 times a week to and from Houston. By now, with 2 little kids under the age of 4. That's a lot of work 2 times a week. But we were doing all that we could to fulfill our faith and our family calling in that moment, and also the vocational calling. Lo and behold, 2.5 months later, 3 months later, just before the election, I get a call out of the blue after we've given it over to the Lord to do his work. My friend from law school that I hadn't seen in 10 years called me and said, I heard you're looking for a job in Houston. I said, absolutely. And within days, I had a job in Houston. And we called the school and said, I've got a job. We want to come down. And you know what they said? We've got 1 spot open, 1 spot left. And it happens to be in your son's grade. And because you have been coming down here twice a week for the past 3 months, We already have his testing. We already know you. And we already can tell it's going to be a good fit. We will save that spot for you if you'll come. But then the decision comes to me. Lord, but you've called me to this vocation. I know you gave me this opportunity to serve on the city council. What am I supposed to do? The answer was clear. Put your faith in him first and make sure that your priority with your family remains strong. Subject that vocational calling at that critical moment. And I did. 2 weeks later, I got elected to the city council. 10 days later, I got sworn in as Mayor Pro Tem of Tyler. 10 minutes later, I held a press conference and resigned. That shocked a lot of people. I am the shortest serving Mayor Pro Tem of the city of Tyler, I'm pretty sure. And I still think I'm the most famous quarterback at a White House, by the way. That perfect 0-10 season put me right up there. 2 weeks later, we were in Houston, Texas. But I can tell you God is faithful because 3 years later, my son, who was 4 years old at the time and couldn't say one word, came back to Tyler, Texas, speaking in full sentences. He graduates this year without having an interpreter, without using sign language, speaking just like you and me, and his future is bright because of the Lord. Because of his faithfulness. And you know it was a miracle? The job that I got in Houston, Texas, that big old city, 4 blocks from my son's school. From my 41st floor office, I could look down on his playground. You tell me that's not divine. It is divine. And students, young men and women sitting here today, God has a plan for you. You may not see it, you may not know it, but he weaves it in his divine timing and in his divine way. And when we came back, I never thought I'd be back in public service. I thought that was all I had for this life. And 4 years later, out of the blue, I got appointed to the county judge position. And you know why? Every commissioner that called me said this. Hey, we remember 7 years ago when you resigned from city council and you put your faith and your family first. And that's what we need in government today. That's what we need at the county level, and so that's why we're making the call to you. And had it not been for that decision in 2009, I would have never gotten that appointment in 2016, and I would have never gotten elected in 2021. And so I can assure you, the way to fulfill your call, your vocational call in this life, is to lay it before the Lord and to say, in your time, in your will, however you would do it, Lord, you do it, and I give it to you. So that's prioritize. Remember, you got that faith calling, the family calling, and your vocational calling. They're all important, but when it comes to those critical moments, you got to keep them in order. Your POV, prioritize, optimize. So second, let's talk about even when you prioritize your faith and family and your vocational callings, you still need to optimize the vocational calling that God has for your life. What does this mean to optimize your calling? Well, I can tell you, you can optimize your calling by working every day to improve physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. This is called trajectory, by the way, and it's what leads to long-term growth and success. This is just one plot on that graph of your life. Where you go from here and the decisions you make from here will determine your trajectory in life. Be excellent in every decision. But also humble yourself to learn and to do a task that others aren't willing to do. And be willing to start again at the bottom. I started again at the bottom more times than I can count in my life. Had I not been willing to do that, the Lord would not have been able to use me the way he wanted to. And you should also choose to take the risk of new opportunities rather than be frozen by the fear of failure. I never regretted taking an opportunity and failing. But I did regret a whole lot of opportunities in this life that I didn't take. Don't do that. The Lord's going to be with you when you jump. And you should remember that the same values that got you here, those same values that LeTourneau University has instilled in you, they don't change when you leave here. You still need to show up on time. You need to be prepared. You need to work hard. And you certainly need to treat people right. That's a winning formula for your vocation. It was the secret to success when you were in kindergarten, and I can tell you from experience, it works in the real world. What you do is important, but how and why you go about that business is even more important. Whether you are playing on the playground in elementary school, sharing your Oreos at the lunch table in high school. I had Twinkies in here, but my teenage daughter told me nobody knows what a Twinkie is these days. So she told me to put Oreos. Working together to finish a tough project in one of your classes here at LeTourneau, or enduring the madness of Washington, D.C., the rules are the same. Show up on time. Be prepared. Work hard. Treat people right. So follow these principles to optimize your vocation. And remember that the goal of your vocation is not to store up treasures on earth for yourself. It's to serve others. It's to glorify God. It's to fulfill that great commandment, loving God and loving others. So that's optimize. So if you prioritize your callings and you optimize that vocational calling, now let's get to what you've been waiting for. You want to vaporize. This seems like an odd word. So what do I mean? Well, vaporize those things that stand in the way of accomplishing the thing that only you were created for. Vaporize your past bad decisions, your present difficult circumstances, and your future hurdles. We all have them. Push through them. Don't use them as excuses in this life. Be an overcomer and a problem solver. Forgive yourself when you screw up. By the way, you will. Forgive others when they screw up. And by the way, they will. Be meek and humble. But at the same time, be strong and courageous. Make excellence a part of every decision. And see the world and your life with that eternal perspective that LeTourneau has instilled in you. That Christian worldview. Then internalize that perspective while you externalize it in the workplace and everything that you do. Listen, I am certain that you can do this. You are yellow jackets and your sting is powerful, right? There is greatness in each one of you. Remember what I told you at the beginning. The Creator made you for something special in this life. It's a unique journey just for you, and He has prepared it for you, and He will be with you every step of the way. Importantly, He brought you here to LeTourneau University, and it has played its part in preparing you to claim every workplace in every nation as a mission field. Do you recognize those words? You should. They should be written on your heart, just like the natural law of God. But now it's up to you to do your part. Will you now hear and heed the call of the Apostle Paul, who wrote in Ephesians 4, quote, "I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received." Will you do that? I am certain that if your point of view is what it should be, you will absolutely live a life worthy of your calling. So follow that point of view, that POV. Prioritize, optimize, and vaporize. Graduates, I wish you Godspeed on your journey, and I pray God's richest blessings and protections upon each of you as you seek to do His will in your life for His glory. Congratulations, class of 2024.
For those encouraging words. It's great to have you here today. I'm President Mason. I'm told by our graduates that these are the diplomas they're looking for. So I'd like to proceed with the conferral of their degrees. Graduation candidates, would you please rise? Dr. Mason, the Registrar's Office has certified that each member of this graduating class has completed all the requirements for the degree as delineated on the official program for this occasion. And since this certification was completed on your behalf, you don't need to review their transcripts or see their identification.
We don't need to see